The first of the 6 bad VC archetypes I wanted to talk about, Chris, is what I call the midwit. Now, the midwit is someone who thinks that they know how business works and therefore that they know what the right questions are to ask a startup. And they're all about business stuff. And when I say that, they're about, revenue. How much revenue are you making? What are your metrics? Show me your model. What's your 5-year projection? Your risk register, all this stuff, right? So taking a lot of the ideas that might apply in a traditional business or in a more mature business and trying to apply those to a startup. And the reason that doesn't work is because at that point, your startup is not a business. Your startup is an idea and a whole lot of energy on trying to discover how to make that idea work in the real world. And so no amount of modeling, no amount of revenue questions and assumptions are going to answer that for you. And all they do is distract you from the true path.
Which is solving a problem, creating a product that anybody cares about, and any early signs of product market fit that you've created real value, right? And so, yeah, in the very early stages, we're talking about angel, pre-seed, seed, and, they're confidently asking you for, revenue as if that's a major part of the business, or your revenue projections, or trying to understand every nook and cranny of your, unit economics. They're very confident about this, right? And they're making it, they furrowed brow, and they're talking to you like serious businessmen and women. And really what they should be talking about is like, where is the real pain in the market? Where is the real pressure points? Where are the real entry points? How do you go from the thin wedge in the world? How might you start to crack that wedge open? What does the product actually do? What are the signs of life that people are finding delight, joy, or relief of suffering from this product? These are the questions that matter. And also, who is your team, and why does that team got founder problem fit? What evidence do you have that you understand some of the hustle and some of the needs to be agile and learn and iterate and pivot? Any questions that make this about like, what is your business? It's just like, I'm pre-seed. Can you give me a break here? We need to talk about some of the stuff that really matters.
Again, I think this is one that we're sort of misunderstood about quite a lot, Chris. And, I think we're getting a little bit notorious for saying, don't focus on revenue. And sometimes that makes people upset on the internet. So I think it is worth going into this a little bit more and what we mean by it and why it's so important, right? I think revenue is fantastic if it is aligned with what you're trying to build. It is one of the best signs of product market fit if you have people willing to pay for what you're building. But what you are doing there with the revenue, or with any of these other things that are more businessy, by having excellent unit economics and so on, you are proving that you have something that you can potentially scale, right? So if you've got revenue that you're like, hey, we've built the same thing and 10 people are paying for it and the retention is incredible and they're happy to keep paying for it. Well, that's interesting to me because that's a sign of strong traction. Then I'm like, okay, go find more of those people and then we're really cooking. If you've built a bunch of different things for a bunch of different people, if you've got a mix of services revenue and like non-recurring revenue and so on, and sure, it's gone up by 100% in the last 6 months, but it's still negligible. Well, that's low quality revenue. It is not a signal of traction. It's a signal that you've just been hustling for some cash, and that's great, but it does not do anything to give me confidence that you've actually got a product and an approach that's going to get traction. So this is really about saying, how do I work backwards from the big thing that we're all saying we're trying to build? And are we de-risking this? Are we actually getting some strong signs that this is the right team, the right approach, that there are these early signs of life, as you say, Chris? And whether that's revenue or really cheap cost of acquisition, really strong retention, it can be any number of things, but you need to interpret them in that context and not just put them into a spreadsheet and apply a bunch of traditional business model thinking to understand what's going to happen. And the midwit VC or the midwit investor, there's 2 types of harm that they cause, right? First of all is simply the fact that they're going to be investing in the wrong sorts of businesses. And so they're going to be passing on really good businesses. That's more their problem than your problem, right? Because this is sort of the dumb money that we talk about, Chris. But the more pernicious thing is they can be really convincing. They're like, I've done this a million times before. I know how to build a business. This is how you do it. And they can take founders who are actually doing the right things and convince them to do the wrong things. And that's even if they don't invest, simply by being so forceful in the wrong direction. I think that can really be dangerous.
That is absolutely the biggest problem. It's not the companies they invest in. It's the companies they don't invest in that they derail by the nature of their questions. So this is a big part of why we rail against this on the show nonstop, because of all of these precious founders with their precious ideas and amazing energy that are being thrown off in the wrong directions, and it frustrates the heck out of us. So
Yep.
Watch out for the Midwit VC archetype. Ask them what their portfolio investments are and which have been successful. And maybe more interestingly, ask them which ones they've passed on that have been really successful. In Silicon Valley, I don't know if they do this as much anymore, but I remember there were a lot of VCs that used to put up their failure wall, all the startups they skipped, they passed on that were huge successes to kind of illustrate that, they're no smarter than founders and that they're in it with founders as well. Some of the top funds did this. It just shows VCs don't really know what they're talking about. They're just like you, stumbling around in the dark trying to figure out what might work. And B, a lot of VCs have never made a good bet in their life. So they're worse than don't know what they're talking about. They're sending you off in the wrong direction. So pay careful attention to the midwits to avoid them at least.